Let's take a look, though, about what the Russians actually are doing. Whether this is a slow or a fast success, it is still moving to the west. It is still conquering territory. It is still killing Ukrainian troops. As you say, demilitarization, according to the Russian definition of that. There was a report out today by Dmitry Medvedev who claimed that Russia has added 230,000 additional troops into their army this year, and they hope to have another 300,000 in the second half of this year. And as you see on the screen there, Russia has been building for quite some time, basically an operational reserve that's not in contact, that can be used, that hasn't been used so far. First of all, let's take a look at that part there. What does that tell you, if Medvedev's numbers are accurate, that they continue to build up the size of their force, but they still haven't employed all of them? What does that mean?
Again, it means the same thing which I was stating nonstop. This gigantic reserve actually isn't there just in case if NATO decides to commit suicide and introduce some kind of force, then of course they will react and they will move to whatever the operational direction or strategic direction this threat will come through. That's what they are there for. And secondly, they will be introduced if Russia decides that enough is enough and it's time to go and take, that's the problem. Russians are already operating in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. They are deep into Sumy Oblast. And even Putin stated, he said, well, we will decide when times come if we need to take Sumy. Russians can take Sumy if they decide to do so. So it is now, again, about physical annihilation of the whatever is left of Ukrainian army. And so, when they will decide to introduce those big arrows, although let me tell you, obviously those arrows were getting longer and bigger for a while now, and suddenly you have those cauldrons, which are measured not 1, 2, or 3 kilometers, they are measured like 4, 8 kilometers, in width, and they're trapped there, not 1, but 2, 3 brigades. And yeah, when you look at the dynamics of the losses of the Ukrainian side, it's just catastrophic. And it's not a secret. Everybody saw it. They take 70-year-old men from the streets. Can you imagine 70-year-old soldier? Great soldier, I guess, right? So they take women now, and 14-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, Hitler Youth all over the place. So yeah, that's what it is, and Russians will continue to kill them until there's nobody left, or until they overthrow the government, or until they have something else, which Ukraine probably will disintegrate. And then Russians will say, okay, let's discuss the political arrangement on this case. We'll take this.
What's really odd, actually, before I get to that next question here, I want to stick with this theme here. You mentioned that Russia is building up its forces in case something happens and they actually have to fight NATO. We've interviewed here on this channel here for the last few months a number of different Russian people who have actually fought on the front line, especially in the drone warfare. And we've been interviewing some folks to talk about the changing nature of conflict and how the best two armies in the world right now are the Russian and the Ukraine armies, better than anybody else in NATO, better even than the Chinese and the United States. I mean, all of them combined, because of the experience. One of the things that really stood out to me that's consistent with everybody I've talked to, even on the Ukrainian side of the line, is that with the proliferation of the various categories of drones, that it's nearly impossible to have this big, like a tank army blasting through somewhere, because the minute that you get in any numbers, it can be hit with both artillery missiles and especially with drones. So the two sides have kind of got into this equilibrium where, especially on the Russian side, they're prioritizing firepower, as you mentioned, even in the Sumy area. So they're doing it steady and slow, as Professor Clark talked about. But here's the question. If that force were to be used on a NATO country that doesn't have all of those drones in the quantities and in the categories that the Ukraine side does, what can we expect from such a conflict on the conventional level?
Well, even with the drones on Ukrainian side, you can expect it, because obviously I'll send you the photograph after we're done here of the this spring. You have this rows of the latest versions of the T-14 Armata tanks, without the Mongol yet, but they are being developed to the front. No, tanks are fighting there, and they fight quite well, not only from the enclosed firing positions, but actually, and it has been recorded many times all over the place. So it's not correct to say that it's just somehow drones stop the development of the tank warfare, for example, especially when you have the firepower and fire impact capable to suppress any kind of the drones, not to speak about the fact that as it's all over the place. You can see now the latest, they are already in serial production, anti-drone drones. Some of those drones are multiple use. They can shoot down and disable all kinds of drones. I mean, of FPV type drones. So it's not like, oh my gosh, drones took over. No. Obviously, as always in any kind of the issue between the sword and the shield, at some point of time, shield will work and will win. And then, of course, the process starts again. So, and yeah, there are countermeasures which are already there. There are countermeasures on the tanks themselves. So tank warfare is not going anywhere. And especially, as I already stated there, it depends on their Russians love to do it. Obviously, it's what is called fire preparation or softening. You know how to do it. You did it before. And especially when you bring what Russia has the best in the world, this massive artillery power, no drone warfare can compare to this. Again, Tornado, the Tornado MLRS, which is the latest missile of the Tornado multi-launch rocket system. It can fly up to 105 kilometers. A single salvo of this Tornado, it's two soccer fields essentially, basically turned into glass. So nothing lives there, So it doesn't matter if you're hiding there somewhere because it's a vacuum, thermobatic, explosions and things of that nature. So it all depends how you plan operations. That's it. Oh, you obviously will get hit here and there, no doubt about it. But the problem, of course, is that it's all on operational level. And when we look attentively at as I already stated, everybody says, "Oh, where's this BMPT Terminator?" It's there. It fights. It's just that if somebody didn't capture it visually, oh yeah, they don't use them anymore. They used all of it very well, including, for example, T-14 Armata, which is the latest tank. So, and,
at least from what I've heard from the Russians who've been doing the fighting, they say that they use less of that armor because it can be hit easier. So they use it. They definitely don't say, they definitely corroborate what you just said there, but they don't lead with it like say during Desert Storm or during Operation Iraqi Freedom, etc. But here's my concern, at least from our perspective. I'm not sure that the Western side has learned that lesson. So I fear that the U.S./NATO would, in a conventional fight with Russia, would try to do what the Ukrainians did in 2023, which is lead with all this armor, and then you see it pile up, and just boneyards basically becomes a boneyard there. And the Western side, as much as I can ascertain anyway, does not have drones in the quantity that the Ukraine army does, which is still makes it very difficult for the Russian side to. That's one of the reasons they do go slowly, but they do go. But if you don't have that overwhelming number of drones on the Western side, what's going to happen when those two armies clash?
Oh no, they will be defeated, obviously. But there's a much greater problem for, God forbid, if NATO decides to do something. Assembly areas, okay? No army in the world moves anywhere without assembly areas. First, if they, God forbid again, if that conventional conflict of this starts first, the ISR, US ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance satellite constellation will be largely disabled. Not all of it, but it will make things in terms of the tactical and operational awareness very difficult. And then, of course, you have assembly areas, and when you have the proper recon, Mr. Iskandero, Mr. Areshnik fly in. And let me tell you, if even the assembly area of the brigade combat team, if you take about it, you saw yourself what Areshnik did to Yuzhmash. They still are afraid to show it properly. So Yeah, single rationing, 36 warheads, it's over. The whole brigade is gone. Like, and there's nothing which can stop it. So it's much deeper, much more profound war. Even before it gets to the indeed what is called close tactical type. You remember what this counteroffensive? You know what? They never even reached the first line of defense. Everything have been slaughtered in what in U.S. manuals, operation manuals, or field manuals called the security zone. Russians call it the zone of the provision, or for a field. They also, which pretty much the same thing, where you make the enemy to start, building yourself into those columns, company or battalion columns and all that. You did it, So and in this case. They never reached in the first line of defense. And they were not only drones, they was just absolute pummeling them with the long-range fires. And artillery played the most crucial role here because it was even what is called Stavitsky. It's not really Surovikin line. They shouldn't be attributing things. Obviously, Surovikin was in charge of the operation, and he was the big honcho who developed it. But it was Mr. Stavitsky, Lieutenant General Stavitsky, who was, of course, and is the chief of the engineering corps of Russia, who did that in such a way that they created those cross zones, almost like Kursk, in a sense, much more advanced, of course. And they basically wiped the floor with this 160,000 people killed on Ukrainian side. And that was it. That was the end of they tried, of course, Kursk, killed 80,000 there, but you know what? What can I say?
Yep, that's kind of where it was. Well, we'll have to wait and see how all this stuff. And I agree with you when you keep saying, God forbid that we should do that. And I pray to God we don't ever do that, because it would just be a losing proposition that nobody would benefit from, and certainly doesn't ever need to be fought. But listen, we really appreciate you coming on today and providing such clarity to this, and especially some of this information we hadn't known before about that Russia had said, we offered to help to the Iranian side, but they didn't want it then. We'll see how it does now. Just reminding everybody here, go to Smoothie X12 on YouTube, and you can see more of Andrei Martyanov, as you can see on the screen right there. Listen, thanks so much for coming on. As always, we really appreciate it. Thank you. And we thank you guys too. Be sure and like and subscribe if you haven't. And we will see you tomorrow on a whole new lineup of stuff you're not going to want to miss on Daniel Davis Deep Dive. We'll see you then.